with the bears now. The bears are my family, and you must treat them kindly." And the uncle said, "You speak truly. Ask your family to come out and tell them that they will be safe." He said, "I want to thank them for taking care of you." And so the mother bear and her 2 little cubs came out, and the uncle told them that he was so thankful that they had cared for his nephew, and then from that time on, he would never do a crooked mind thing again. And so, just like the mother bear, she showed love to her family. That uncle, he found love in his heart for the boy. And then they were a true family. They were a true family, the uncle and the boy. And the boy said, "But just remember that all the animals are part of our family too." And that's the story called "The Boy Who Lived with the Bears." Oh, hey was thee, hey wa, hey wa, hey was thee, hey ya ya, 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 softly, hey ya ya, hey ya ya, hey ya ya. And now a great big bang, and we'll all go, hey! Well, let's do the last part again. You remember at the end. Hey ya ya, hey ya ya. Get ready. Hey ya ya. Hey! Once there was a deer, but this deer was different from any other deer in the world. I'll tell you, this deer didn't have a coat of just one color. His coat was of 5 different colors, and his antlers were shiny white. Now this deer lived high, high up in the forest, hidden away. His only friend was a jet black crow, and the deer and the crow would roam through the high forest, and they would go to the top of the hill, and they would look down at the village. But the deer was afraid of people. He would look down at the village. No one in the village knew that such a creature lived in the high forest. Now, one day, a farmer was walking back to the village from another faraway village. And it was getting dark, and he was walking quickly along the edge of the river, but then his foot slipped in the mud, and all of a sudden he tumbled into the river, and the water was icy cold because the water came from the melted snow up on the mountain. And the farmer called out, "Help! Help! Someone help me!" But in this part of the forest, there was no one to help. And he called out again, and he said, "Help! I'm drowning!" And the only one who heard was the 5-colored deer. And that deer ran from the forest down to the river. He plunged into the river, and he seized that deer by his coat, and he dragged him out. Now that old farmer, when he could get his breath back, he said, bowed to him and said, "Oh, you've saved my life. How can I repay you? I will do anything, for you saved my life." And the deer said, "You don't need to repay me, but there is one thing." He said, "You must never, ever tell anyone that you have seen me or where I live." And the farmer said, "Well, I promise I will never tell, but why do you ask such a question?" He said, "Look at me. My coat is 5 colors. My antlers are white. I know that men can be cruel and greedy, and I know that there are many. If they knew I lived here, they would come to capture me and kill me, and they would sell my hide for gold. And that is why I hide in the forest." So the farmer promised, and he went back to his village. And every day as he worked in the fields, he would look up in the mountains and he would remember about that 5-colored deer who saved his life. And he never, ever told one person. But one day, the richest man in that whole village had a dream. And in his dream, he saw a 5-colored deer. And he said, "If I have dreamed it, it must be true." And so that rich man went to the village and he said, "If anyone knows of this creature and can lead me to him, I shall give him 12 bags of gold." Well, when the farmer heard that, he thought, "Why, I would be rich. I could have servants like the rich man. I could have fine foods. I wouldn't have to work so hard all day from early morning to late at night." And so he went to the home of the rich man, forgetting all about his promise. And he said, "I can lead you. I know where the deer lives. I can lead you to the deer." And the rich man said, "Come tomorrow, for I will hire a band of hunters to help me capture him." So the next morning, the farmer met the rich man and all his hunters, and they all had bows and arrows. And he led them up into the mountains, along the river, the very same river where he almost lost his life. And then they started up the trail to the high forest. But it just happened that that black crow, the friend of the 5-colored deer, was flying overhead, and he saw the hunters coming up the hill with their bows and arrows. And he ran to the deer and he said, "You must run, you must run. They are coming to capture you." The deer was so sleepy he didn't even open his eyes. And the crow says, "You must wake up. It is almost too late." Because now they were getting closer and closer. And then the deer opened his eyes. And do you know, he didn't seem frightened at all. And he said, "I will not run, for if I run, they will surely shoot me." He said, "I will wait for these hunters." And he walked right out into the clearing, and he stood there in the sunlight with his antlers shining. And when the hunters reached the top of the hill, they aimed their bows and arrows. But the rich man said, "Stop! Do not shoot this creature." And the deer walked up to the rich man. And the rich man said, "I know that if you walked into the clearing for people who come to capture you, you must be a magical creature." And the deer said, "Yes, I'm the 5-colored deer that you have been searching for. But how did you find me? I have hidden in the forest for many years and no one has ever seen me." And then the rich man said, "But this farmer told me that this was where you lived." And then the deer looked at the farmer and said, "Did you forget so soon? Do you not remember when you asked me how you could repay me for saving your life. And I said, you must promise never to tell anyone where I live. Have you forgotten? And old farmer said nothing. He just hung his head. He was so ashamed. And the deer said, I risked my life that day to save yours, and this is how you repay me. You bring hunters to come and kill me. And then the rich man said to the farmer, is that true? Did this deer save your life? And the old farmer said, he did. He said, I betrayed him because of my greed. I couldn't think of anything except the gold. And the rich man said, then you are a worthless man. He said, this creature is far better than you, for he risked his life to save another's. And you loved gold more than another's life. And then he said, go back to your forest. Go in peace. We will not shoot you today or ever. No deer shall ever be killed on my land. And so the deer and his friend, the blackbird, they went back up into the forest that they loved, and they lived peacefully forever after. In the early days, people lived in cabins far away from each other. And the little girl lived with her mother. And right outside their cabin, it was all a forest. And every day the mother would say, don't go into the forest because you know what happens. You might meet the gunny wolf. Now the little girl, she didn't know what a gunny wolf was, but she didn't want to find out. So she always obeyed her mother. But one day her mother went to visit someone in another cabin, and she said, now you be sure not to go in the forest. But as the girl waved to her mother as she was leaving, she saw at the edge of the forest some beautiful flowers. And she said, if I just run real fast, I'll pick those flowers for my mother. And so she ran very fast. She picked the flowers, and while she picked them, she was a little bit frightened, so she sang a song like this. Kiwa, kiwa. Can you do it? Kiwa, kiwa. And then she said, oh, my mother will be happy. But then she saw some flowers just a little bit further. They were beautiful. They were red flowers. So she ran. She looked around to be sure she didn't see any gunny wolf. She picked the red flowers while she was singing. Kiwa, 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 kiwa. When up rose the gunny wolf, and he said, little girl, why for you move? She was so frightened, she said, I know move. Can you do it? I know move. You sing that good and sweet and song again. So this time the little girl sang. She couldn't sing very well. She was so frightened. She sang, Kumwa, kiwa. Can you sing a real scared way? Kumwa, kiwa, kum. And she kept looking at the gunny wolf. And pretty soon he closed an eye. And pretty soon she looked, and he was asleep. And then she